Hey, thank you, Kashish. Thanks so much for the great introduction. Good evening, everyone. First of all, thank you so much for joining. I know some of you would have ended your professional day, maybe right before this meeting, and still you are interested to learn about this. So I commend you for that. Commend you for the energy and joining here. I have ensured that this is more of an interactive session rather than just me speaking about stakeholder management and data visualization. So I will keep asking questions, and as Kashish said, please post your answers in the Q&A, whatever you think. Right? There is nothing right or wrong here. Just I want to provoke your thoughts. During the sessions, and I want you to go into deep thinking mode wherein you can think about problems and how to solve them. So that's my goal for today, because rest everything apparently ChatGPT can do these days. Right. A few general rules. I would say only two. One, maybe keep your phone aside for next 100 odd minutes, and then no googling or asking ChatGPT when I'm asking a question. All right. So only with these two things, let me get started. I'm sharing my screen, and Kashish, maybe you can give me a heads up when you can see my presentation in the presentation mode. Okay.
Absolutely.
Just 1 second. Yep, I want to share my screen. Yeah.
Perfect.
Can you see my screen? All
Yes,
right.
I'm able to see your screen.
Okay. I have a lot to cover, but I would like to go slowly and also, answer your queries as we go along. I do not want to wait till the end to answer your queries. So whenever you have a question, please put it in Q&A, and Kashish will be helping me, with the questions and all whenever they pop up. I think I can also see when I'm presenting the screen if anything pops up in the Q&A. So I'll try to answer your questions then and there. And then in slides also, I have tried to make it interactive so that you all can answer and think. So with that, let's get started. There are two major topics that I'm trying to cover today. The first one is the stakeholders requirements and how do you understand it, uh, convert it into something which is actionable, and then how data visualization plays a key role into translating these requirements, and then I'll go into the depths of data visualization. What are these principles that really make for good visuals. So that's my whole agenda for today. Let's get started. So I wanted to get started with a joke because many of you might have had a hectic day, and some of you would have also seen this image, right? That when you go, yes, I think somebody has raised their hand.
Paramita Das.
Yes,
Paramita
Paramit.
Das, do you have any question? I have allowed you
Am I
talking.
am I audible now?
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Yeah, actually, it got clicked by accidentally, but
Okay.
I have not. Let me go through, then I will ask some questions. Sorry, thank you.
Oh, no
No
problem.
problem. Okay. So it so happens, and I think it has happened to us in the personal as well as professional lives, when we are looking at our customers, whether they are internal or external, and we are, they are explaining their requirements, what they are really looking for in a product. And when the final solution gets delivered to them, it's quite different. I think in this image, it is still the similar, but in many cases, it could be quite different from what the customer really needed versus what the customer explained versus what got delivered into it. So I'm looking for some answers here. Why do you think this kind of thing happens? And we know we have a lot of structure in place in corporates today, but still we see this thing keeps happening, that what a customer has in mind in terms of a product versus what gets delivered to the customer, there is a difference between the two. So feel free to post your answers in the Q&A. Okay, somebody has put in the chat. As we said earlier, can everyone put their answers in Q&A, please? So yeah, I'm getting some really good answers over here. Communication issues, silos, customer thinks they know what they need always. Good. Yeah, so it is basically a loss of translation, right? That is happening between what customer has in their head versus what they are actually speaking they need. And finally somebody from who's designing the products, working on the product, on that, translating what it is saying. So it's basically loss of translation in several stages that actually causes the two things to be different. Right. So how can we avoid it? That should be our next goal, right? If we know there is a loss in translation. And I would like to give a very simple example of why, even after the customer might think they have very clearly stated the requirements, and even after that, then why would this scenario happen, right? Take a common example. Let's say you go to a restaurant and you order a gravy there, right? And now the waiter asks you, how much spicy would you like to have your gravy? And from your perspective, you are saying medium spice, right? And I think it has happened to many of us. When the gravy finally arrives, it is either very spicy or it is mildly spicy. So what has happened is, when you have stated the term medium, your level of medium and spices means something else, from the chef. So that's the difference, right? Even when you have specified the term medium, it is not absolute in nature, and that is why there is a loss in translation. Okay, so these
Yeah,
kind of
can
things.
I say something?
Yes,
Yeah, like we have different interpretation of the same word.
exactly. Yeah, right.
Yeah, and we don't picturize the same things during our learning period when we.
Absolutely. Yeah. So what is medium for me? In fact, it is true regarding averages also, right? So if you take maybe average height in one country versus average height in another country, maybe a person who is average in one country is very tall in other country, right? So if two people from these two different countries are talking about average heights, they have very different perspectives in their mind, right? And that's when the concept of even average can get blurry. So when we are speaking or talking about such terms, and then stating our requirements in these terms, using these terms in the statements, that is when these kind of issues can happen, that what customer said versus what he really wanted. So that's one difference. And second is how the requirement was actually understood by the team. So this actually creates a need for business analysts and program and project managers who can really have this requirement translated very well. Okay, I'll pause here. I see some of them have. Does anyone have any question? Anyone raised hand? No.
No, I
Okay.
don't see any questions so far. I think we
Okay.
can
Gap
go.
of understanding and this.
Ma'am,
Okay.
this is Vijendra here. I
Yes.
have a when you take a requirement, so generally a BA will prepare a business requirement document or a functional requirement document.
Yes.
So, right of having the things documented, then how he is explaining that from a customer point of view. Then
Yes.
how that the information gets lost in between, and is it more related to the interpretation and the delivery?
Yes. Yes, it is more related to interpretation. As I said, like maybe customer has, in fact, the word quality also, right? Maybe customer is saying, I want the best quality product in the world, and customer is not ready to spend that much, right? And when the customer says best quality, has the customer even experienced what is the best quality product in that category in the entire world, right? What is best for him may not be best for others, right? So that is when we use subjective terms like that, there is a lot that can get lost in the translation, right? That's all I'm trying to say. And that is why, what we need to do, these business analysts and project managers, I'll go on to my next slide, and I'll also discuss about those things, and that is where I'll emphasize again, is where data visualization is important, right? Maybe customer said something, okay, over here, this is how the customer explained it. Now you see, and what was there in his mind was actually a circular structure. Then why was customer explaining the swing like the rectangle, right? So sometimes the customer himself or herself cannot translate exactly what's there in their mind. They cannot articulate it, right? So the first loss starts from that point itself, right? Then the business analyst who is trying to understand that requirement is not able to get the levels that the customer is talking about over here. And then in each phase, when the actually, the designers and others are working on it, in each stage there can be a loss. So how can we keep this whole team together, and which person will play that key role of bridging the customer with the team, right? So that's what typically a business analyst would do, right? But if instead of imagine just articulating in words, if the customer had drawn this image, wouldn't it be much more clear? If we had a visual of what customer is really looking for, right, then we wouldn't need so many words to describe their requirements and all, right?
So it is more of a wireframe or prototype you are talking about.
Yes, yeah, sort of. Right, so that is why it is said that a picture is worth 1,000 words, and that is what we um, uh, that is what clears up the requirements over here, right? That's what I'm trying to imply through this entire process and cycle, right? So clear communication of course is important, but then there can be subjectivity in the words when individuals are speaking about that, because they may be coming from different experiences, different perspectives, and they may have different meaning of the same word. So that can always happen, right? So in order to avoid that, I would say one of the ways to avoid that, of course, is to keep in constant communication, and second is to employ visuals and also keep the customer engaged in each phase of your development, so that from the beginning the customer has an idea of what they are going to get at the end of the project. Okay. Anyone wants to add a comment here or still has any questions on this?
Audience, we request you to raise your hand. We'll unmute you, give you talking permission, and then you can go ahead and unmute. Request you to kindly raise your hand. Thank you. No questions. I think we can proceed.
Okay. Let's proceed to the next next key task of how you can have effective communication with your stakeholders. Now let's say you have a project. Yes, Vijendra, he has raised hand.
Ma'am,
you can
yeah,
unmute.
effective communication, you just put it there. So interest you have marked. So
Yeah.
is it how different it is from a Rasi matrix when we do for a
RACI matrix is different, right? In RACI matrix, you are trying to define the responsibility, the accountability of the team members, right? Here we are talking about stakeholders which can influence your project. So we are talking it from an external. So there is a team which is working on the project, and then I'm talking about the stakeholders, right? Maybe who is the sponsor of your project, who is your customer. These kind of people I'm talking about, who can have influence on your project, like they might kill the project or put your project on hold, maybe because of resource issues, limited availability, and things like that. Okay, I'm coming to that. Okay, let me finish this slide. And this slide also we will later go on through. So I want to everyone to take a very hard look at this slide. Please look at this visual. And there is something wrong with this visual. Okay, and unfortunately it appears on the PMI website. Okay, it should not be appearing. There is something fundamentally wrong with this visual, and I want you to just keep, maybe you can take a screenshot or whatever you want to do with this. But later on, when we are discussing the principles of data visualization, I'll come back to this slide again to ask, can you now identify? Maybe right now you cannot, but maybe later when we have discussed the principles, we'll come back to this slide to see what is visually wrong with this. There is nothing wrong in the information being presented, first of all. Okay, there is something wrong with the visual itself, right? Not with the information. Okay, so keep a track of that, and please remind me if later on I forget to come back to this slide. All right. Yeah. So now let's say you are working on a project. Let's say you have understood the requirements. Okay. Now you have to keep that effective communication with all of your stakeholders, right? Now stakeholders can be defined in multiple ways. You can define them like internal, external, the team that you're working with versus the outside, and there can be several ways of dividing them. But this 2 by 2 matrix of power versus interest of the stakeholder is one of the most effective ways to define stakeholders, right? And then you have to then keep your communication strategy or the management strategy you have to devise according to each of those quadrants that your stakeholder is falling in. Okay, so so there'll be 4 quadrants like high power, high interest, high power, low interest, low power, low interest, and low power, high interest. So what management strategies you should employ with your with different sorts of stakeholders is what we are going to look at this slide. So on the y-axis, I have power here, and on the x-axis, I have interest here. Okay, and this is more of interest to us, that stakeholders who have high power, right, and their interest may be low or high in the project, right? When I'm using the word high power of the stakeholder, I essentially mean that these are the stakeholders who are like your sponsors or your customers who can maybe kill your project, right? Maybe customer may say, I'm not satisfied with the progress, or you have not shared the deliverables with me by this date, and so and so, and I might kill the project. Or you are working for a large company, and your sponsor happens to be your business director or VP. So those people can decide to change portfolios at any point in time to align well with the business goals and this. So these are those power people who have the power to make great impacts on your projects. Okay, so that's what we mean by power. Now, in terms of interest, is how closely are they monitoring the project, right? Is it a very huge project that is directly linked with their goals, versus yeah, they may have high power to control your project, but then they are not very much bothered because it maybe indirectly links to their goals and aspirations, and those cases may happen. So in such cases, what management strategies you should devise, right? It is very clear that you will spend very low power on stakeholders which are on low power side, right? You don't want to spend too much time over here. You want to invest your energy limited into high power stakeholders. So let's first look at the high power, high interest block, which is over here. So these stakeholders you must involve in the decision making. You have to make them advocates of your project because they are interested in the project, so they can have positive influence over other high power stakeholders as well. You have to provide them with regular information. Anything good or bad happening with the project, you have to keep them updated about it. Okay, you have to also tell them the benefits of the project in detail, because they have high power and they may take some decision on your project. So they must know about all the benefits that they are getting out of the project. You have to gain their confidence and support. And any negative influence, see, if they are not happy with the progress or something, they get irritated with the progress of the project, they might actually negatively influence other stakeholders as well. So you have to mitigate that risk as well. So that's your responsibility there. And then let's talk about the high power and low interest stakeholders. They're like mostly unexploded bombs, which may explode at any point of time. They don't have much interest in the project, but their power is really high. So what you have to do with them is that you have to keep their interest. You have to, maybe send regular communication to them. You might not seek their opinion, because they're not really interested in the project, but you have to send them communication, like maybe weekly 4-ups that you are sending, or some newsletters that has the information about project. And if there is a critical stage that has arrived at in your project, then you have to definitely seek their opinion on such cases. So this is where you will be spending 90% of your energy, as a business analyst or project manager. This is the quadrant or the line to look out for. Now, for low interest and low power, you have to just keep them informed. You don't really have to make any extra effort on this sort of stakeholder, because they cannot impact your project negatively anyhow. So just maybe through website and newsletters where you are updating project, just share these links with them. For high interest and low power, you have to keep their enthusiasm. They are in a way linked to the project, and they have some high interest, although low power. So of course you don't have to include them in the decision making. So you do not have to let them, because they may appear over enthusiastic, and you might think, okay, maybe let's take their opinion and this, which is not really necessary. Okay. So more than 90% of the energy you have to invest here. And for that, it is necessary that you first of all identify of all the stakeholders who are there on your project, which ones are high power and which ones are low power. So that's the first distinguish that you're going to do. And then you are going to divide it according to their interest and then devise your strategies. Okay. Anything?
We have one question on the chat box.
Yeah, I'm seeing that who are the stakeholders, right? I think I explained in a way. So stakeholders, as I said, right? Anyone working on the project, anyone who has given you sponsorship for the project, anyone who will receive the outcome of the project, right? They're all stakeholders of the project, right? So each and everyone, if I have to say in very layman terms, each and everyone impact who has a stake in the project is a stakeholder, right? But typically, when we are talking about these matrix over here, we are talking about you know we are talking about external stakeholders. By external, I mean people apart from working on the project team, right? So that is called a project team, those who are working to get those deliverables, right? Other than that, everyone else. So like if you are having a review process, who all are sitting in the review, who will give you a go ahead to go to the next stage, those are your stakeholders. Who's your customer? Your customer is one of the stakeholders. Okay. Is that question clear? Yes, it is valid for internal stakeholders as well. As I said, so they may reprioritize their business goals and this, and you might be working on a product, or a project that they might hold or kill for some time. So,
So is it?
yes,
Can I say?
yes, Paramita, yeah,
Yeah, it's like the client you are saying the stakeholders or
yeah. Yeah, so
those.
clients are also stakeholders, but there are other stakeholders also. So sometimes, let's say you are working on an innovation project, right?
Yeah.
You don't really have a customer yet, and that situation happens, right? Maybe Apple, when they came up with iPod, there was nothing like that in the market. Okay,
Yeah, before it
so
is
there
selling
was
to the
no,
customers, it is
yeah, there is no
on the
customer,
display.
right? Yeah, there
Customer.
was no customer. They thought it would be a cool innovation, and it would sell out in the market, right?
Yeah.
So in that case, when that team was working on that creation of that iPod, who do you think were the stakeholders? It was probably Steve Jobs and other people who had invested in that project. Sometimes companies spend millions and billions of dollars in innovation,
Okay, I
right?
have another basic question.
Yeah.
Like, why do we have so many terms for the single means same meaningful thing? Like, like it's like from the source to the sink. Somebody
Mhm.
develops it and somebody receives it by buying
Yes.
it from the marketplace.
Yeah.
But we have different names like clients, stakeholders, investors. Suppose like it's like
So I think each
specific.
term will may have a different meaning, but together you can club all of them potentially within stakeholders, right? So investor is a different person, right? As I said, your uh, not all the times you may have a customer, right? For innovation projects especially, you're just trying out some ideas, right? So who will give you the money? Who will give the money, the team, to work on these kind of innovation projects? In that case, you have internal sponsors, right? You have some business directors and VPs who believe in some idea and they ask you to execute on it, right? And then once only your product is completed, it is there, then they'll start marketing it out, and start looking for potential customers. So that way there can be little difference between what sort of stakeholders you have, internal or external. Sometimes there is a customer demand, I want this product or this service, then you have an external facing customer for whom you're trying to design something. Okay. Yeah, did I answer your question? And I think there is one more hand raised. Yes, Vijendra.
So, ma'am, you talked about the innovation group being an
Yeah.
internal customer. Uh,
Not necessarily always, but many times, right? Because if you're trying out something new and all, you don't know, right? Like who will be your customers and all. There may not be an actual demand in the market and all. You might have done some market survey, but there may not be an actual demand or an actual customer, ready to buy your product. So that can
ma'am,
happen, right? I gave example of iPod.
Yes, ma'am. So then, when you're working with the iterative model, agile model,
Yeah.
where you are also getting the feedback continuously,
Yes.
so this model will remain the same, or will,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So whether you are working in agile or waterfall, that's another, like, how do you run the project, right? Which methodology you're using? Are you using hybrid, agile, or waterfall? These management strategies will actually remain the same, right? Because stakeholders can still be divided by power versus interest matrix.
sure, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Uh, any last comment or question on this this slide? Yes, Paramita?
Yeah, so interest means the interest of the
The stakeholder in the project.
who is the stakeholder? Sorry.
Okay, so stakeholder, as I said, your sponsor, your customer, or other people, who are who have
Who
a
is
stake.
asking, demanding some a product?
Yeah, who is asking or demanding anything? Anyone who sits on the review, right? Maybe your manager, if there is a team, the managers of that team who's working on the project,
Suppose I
right?
will give you one situation where
Yeah.
the seller wants to sell something.
Mm-hmm.
Will he be termed as stakeholder? Because he is demanding to sell. I want to sell something.
Yeah.
There is no customer yet. Okay, he wants to generate customers.
Okay.
So in that case, will the seller
His
be a
customer
stakeholder?
is his stakeholder then, right?
So there is not no customer generated yet in that
Yeah.
case. So
Yeah.
will you say that the seller is also a stakeholder in this case?
No, not really. No.
Because interest is in
See,
the
this is,
seller's side.
yeah. No, so you're saying because seller is interested in selling their product, that's why?
But he is not getting demand from the customers, or he has
Yeah.
to generate interest from the
Yeah.
customers, like a reverse flow now.
Yeah. So that's a complete different situation. See, when I moved to this slide, when I was talking about it, what I said when we moved from here to here, right? So this is the first stage when you are interacting with your customer for the very first time, right? You are asking customer what is their requirement, right? So that you can convert it into a project and you can work on it. Okay. So from there, we moved to the next one. Now, let's say you have a project and you have a customer who will buy your product. In that case, what are the management strategies for the stakeholders who will be involved in your project? Okay. You're talking about a different scenario altogether, in which case, there is a product at hand with seller already. Okay. And now he needs to sell. That's a very different situation because the product is now ready. We are here talking about this situation when the project is ongoing, when the product is not yet ready. What you should keep doing during the duration of the project. Okay. Yeah, somebody saying stakeholders are part of the project or product development, correct? Okay. All right. Can we move on to the next slide?
Yes, sure.
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah. Okay, so now why is data visualization important, right? I gave you another example in the first slide. Had the customer simply drawn a picture and not articulated his or her requirement, maybe we could have ended with a better product, right? So there is no denying the fact that data visualization is important, but I would still like to give an example. And again, I'm asking question on this slide. I give you, okay, yeah. So there are 4 data sets that you see over here. You are just seeing some raw numbers. Okay. So earlier we talked about loss of translation when we are using words like medium or average or best, because it can mean different things for different people. But 10 means same thing for everyone, right? 8.04 will mean same for everyone. So there are 4 data sets here: x1, y1, x2, y2, 3, y3, and x4, y4. Right? If you just look at the raw numbers, can you make out any sense out of it? Now let's say customer is saying, okay, each of the attributes or the characteristics I want in my product, I'm giving you in terms of numbers. Let's say there are 6 attributes. Let's take example of a mobile phone, smartphone. And let's say each of this, I want this megapixel camera, I want this, I want this. So if they are giving like that, they are now being much more succinct than they were before. But if you were to just look at these raw number sets of data, please put your answers in Q&A. Would you be able to make any sense out of this number, or what we need to do about these numbers if there are 4 data sets? Okay, yardstick missing. Yes, what do we compare it against? Very good, right? This is granular data. For presentation, we would need to provide more visuals and aggregates. Perfect. Need more context. Correct. Needs to be baselined. Yes, correct. Okay, so now somebody said aggregates. Okay, I'm going to give you some statistics about this data. Okay. So this is the descriptive statistics of this data. Each of these data sets have 11 observations. If you take out the X mean, that comes out to be 9 for all. Now imagine you did not have the raw data, okay? And now you have 4 data sets and their statistics given like, in the second table, right? So 9 and 7.5 and this way. Okay, their standard deviation also happens to be same. And if you draw a regression line for all 4 of these data sets, you will still arrive at the same answer. So that y is equal to mx plus c, that line is also exactly same. And hence the correlation, which is 0.82, I'm sorry. Okay, for all the 4 data sets. Now imagine if I gave you this descriptive statistics for these 4, and this is correct, by the way, you can calculate it by yourselves. So if you do that, now what can you infer from the data, from these statistics? Can you say these 4 data sets are identical in one ways or the other? After looking at, yes, means are same, and standard deviation is also the same, observation number is same, correlation is same. Somebody saying normal data distribution. Okay, any more guesses? More of a correlation, makes no sense individually, needs a relationship between them. Okay, all right. Okay. By the way, has anyone ever seen this data before? This is actually a very popular data set, which really explains why data visualization is important and why you should not move to statistics before doing data visualization, because this can be really, really misleading, right? Uh, Metadata is needed. Anyone knows what this is? Has anyone seen it before? Okay. All right, let me give the answer. It is actually Anscombe's quartet. Okay, so this was a French scientist who created these 4 data sets to exactly explain why you should always first, do some data wrangling and then go into the statistics, because if you directly do the math, these kind of situations can happen. Now, of course, he created this data with the purpose of explaining this, but this happens in more like in real life also, more than you would like to admit. Okay. Now let's see how the data, these 4 data, if you were to simply plot them, how they would look like. See, so far it is confusing, right? It seems like all 4 of these data sets are extremely identical to each other. And so let me show you, this is how these 4 data sets look like. Isn't it surprising? You see the group 1 data, how it is scattered X and Y. Group 2 is scattered like this. Group 4 is very different. All the values are same. One value is over here. And then group 3 is like this. These 4 data sets are extremely different from each other. And yet the statistics tell you that, almost everything is same about those data sets. Okay. If you had just visualized those before, you would be at a much better position than you would be if you calculated the statistics first. So I'm not saying you don't do the stats, but you do the stat only after you have seen how the data looks like actually. Okay, so numbers can also lie, and we'll also go into, how is there a lot of lying in the numbers and the visuals. But visuals would not lie. They'll immediately give you a sense of how similar or different the data is. Okay. Yeah. Is this interesting? Do you find this interesting that 4 data sets for whom the statistics are like this same, their distribution, their actual this is the actual distribution, by the way, right? That is very, very different. And now realize why the correlation was same and why the regression line is coming as same. So if you draw a line, so say, roughly the line would go like this from here to here, y is equal to mx plus c. For this also it will go like this also, like y is equal to mx plus c. Okay. And over here also it will go like this. Okay, because there is one outlier over here. Okay. All right. Let's come to the next point, or anyone has any questions here in this, right? This I just wanted to share with you to explain the importance of wow, someone is saying, yeah, CTC and actual in hand. Really good. Yeah. So now what role data visualization can play, and creating just simple visual. All I have done is created just these scatter charts with the help of Excel to see how this data is. Okay, so before you start doing anything else on the data, always do the visualization first, and then you do all the stats and everything. So that will follow. But the first thing is to visualize the data. Okay, let's move on. And my next topic is on Gestalt principles. Okay, somehow I need to click twice in order to get into the window. Okay, so Gestalt is a German word, and that indicates that the whole the whole, which is basically sum of individual parts, is more than just the sum of parts, right? So like in Hindi we have a saying, ek aur ek 11. So it's not like 1 and 1 are 2, but if 2 people unite, they can be as powerful as 11. And the similar goes for Gestalt principles, that the way human brain and the mind. So again, this scientist tried different experimentations with visuals and came up with these, I think, six principles. There is some what we can say conflict among data visualizers, some, and now new more are getting added each day. But I think initially he gave around 6 principles, which he said is how human brain works. And so you should never, whenever you are creating a data visualization, you should never ever kill the primal instinct of how humans will see the data. Okay, and we'll see some examples over here. Let's look at the first one and what the principle says. Okay, so when you look at this case, what do you see? I want some answers here. Okay, so you can see a picture appearing. Okay, what do you see in this picture? And what does your eye, your brain immediately sees when you're looking at this picture? Any quick answers? Okay. Okay, gap is what someone is saying. Yeah. Okay, polka. Yeah, polka dots. Yeah, I'm also wearing polka dots, by the way. Yeah. Similar they are. Okay, so the dots are of exactly similar radius, by the way. One which is separated. Exactly. Exactly. Right? That's the word I'm looking for, right? Separation, which is there. Okay, so when you look here, immediately your mind sees the gap. Somebody also answered the word gap, right? Your mind immediately sees the gap which is over there between. So there are some 6 columns in the beginning, and then there is a gap, and then there are 2 columns, then there is a little bit gap, and then there are 2 more columns, right? So this is called the principle of proximity. Okay, so what it says is that how human brain processes the information is things which are closer to each other appear together. Okay, so your brain will say in some or the other way, these 6 columns are more similar to each other than these 2 columns, and then these 2 columns. And the set of these 2 columns is similar to the set of these 2 columns, which is different from this, right? So like this set is much more similar to this one compared to this one, because this is most distant. So that's the principle of proximity. Okay. Sorry. No, I want to continue. Yeah, dots and this. Okay. Let's look at the other principle. I hope this one is clear. Proximity, it's very easy, right? If you just go by your human intuition, you know, how our brains have trained over last thousands of years, it's very simple to understand. Okay. Now let's look at the other one. Now this time everything is equally distant. So what do you see this time? What is this principle that we are talking about? Quick answers. Slanted. Proximity, we are done. Now you see there are square boxes. We have moved on to the second image now. So in each of such image, you see the, yeah, I have the answer already, right? So now the squares are actually equally distant in terms of rows and in terms of columns. And now what is the distinguishing factor is the color over here, right? So human brain, the way it processes the information, it can distinguish between colors, and it tries to group similar colors together. So it is in a way, even though they are very far apart. Now you see between this and this. So here proximity is not working, right? If proximity was working, you would think that this and this are like more similar to this because they are closest to this green. But that's not how your brain is working, right? I think each one of you, when you are looking at this visual, you are thinking all the greens are similar in one fashion and all the grays are one group, right? Is that how your brain is thinking when you're looking at it? Cell division. Getting very interesting answers. Yeah, different colors, pattern, right? Okay. So I hope everyone is seeing two different groups here, right? One a group of gray and another group of green, right? So that's the principle of similarity. Okay. So according to color, your brain or your mind has the ability to, dissect things into different groups. Okay. Let's look at the other one. Okay, this one is an interesting one. This is the logo of World Wildlife Organization, WWF, not the other WWF that you are thinking about. What is this showing? Just look at the image of this panda over here, and what do you think? And yeah, before I already said the answer, but um, but has anyone, is anyone finding it difficult that this is not a panda, right? We can all see this is a panda, but still something is missing, right? But how is your mind still interpreting this as panda? I think I already gave the answer, so you only need to know this. Absence of details, uh, outline missing, connecting the dots, outline missing. Okay, I need to open chat and Q&A both because half of you animal welfare, eyes. Okay. All right. I think I have the right answer here. Negative space. Wow. Somebody knows that term. We'll come to that. Okay. But this one is more about, yes, in some sense, I think negative space also, but two people answered correct. Outline missing uh, here, right? So you see the outline of this panda is not really clear, right? The line does not go from here till here till here, right? It's not finishing the panda, but none of you have a problem in interpreting that this is a panda, isn't it? So that's how your human brain works, right? It has the capability of filling in the missing components or the missing items. It can still fill the outline. Okay, so that is why this is the principle of closure. Your mind has the ability to interpret close body examples, right? So that's what this principle is. And now let's look at this principle. Okay, so is it closure? Yes, the principle is called closure. Okay, yeah, brain says panda from experience because your brain has seen panda before, and now even though the outline of the panda is missing from various places, it can still fill it up, right? So that's the principle of closure. Your brain can close, can interpret this as a close body or a close shape, even though the shape is not really close. Okay, let's look at the other one, the fourth principle. Okay, so the fourth principle, it goes something like this. Okay, again, look at this picture and tell me what's going on here. Guesses. Okay, run through. Other answers: intersection, adopting or change in trend, shortest path, reflection, link. Wow, I'm getting a lot of answers. Bhedchal. All right. Yeah, I think one of these answers is correct. So now, okay, and in these you have to, really think about how your mind or brain is working. What I'm looking for is, I'm trying to evoke your thoughts, right? Color disruption, someone is saying. So when you are following an image, when you're looking at the visual, how your eyes go, your eyes or your brain wants to go in continuation, right? So we saw, and now you see how playing with um, different elements of these gestalt principles, you can actually create either very powerful visuals, or you can be really pathetic and your visuals would not create that much impact, right? So in the first one, we saw the proximity, in which we said the items which are closer together, they appear closer. But here the items are all equidistant, but they are differentiated by colors. Okay, then we talked about the closing lines. Now over here, what is happening? There are two colors, but is your mind interpreting this thing as one group and this as one group? Absolutely no, right? What your mind is interpreting is you are going from here, and then instead of going here, it is going to continue here. Okay, even though the color is different, right? So the principle of similarity is not correctly used in this visual. So ideally this red should have continued here, because that is how your brain is processing the information. Okay, so that's an incorrect choice of this. So never do this. This is an example of that. Your brain and your mind has the capability of following things in continuation. So that is the principle of continuity. Okay, so typically if this visual was correct, then these rest of the remaining dots should have been red, and this is another straight line. So how your mind in respect of continuity is reading it, this is one group and this is other group. Okay, it is not reading it as that. Okay, all of four gestalt principles that are there on this slide are clear. Any question anyone has? And do you think they are helpful when you'll be, creating visuals? Okay. Similarity. Do you want me to explain similarity again, or you have a question? Yes.
Yeah, like in proximity, like it's the gap between the things giving an impression, and
Yes.
in the similarity in proximity, and in similarity, the same is there, the same gap is there, but it is induced with color difference. Is
Yes.
that
Yeah. So yeah, you have to see how your
yeah?
mind is processing information, right? So when you are looking at this visual, right? So the principle of similarity says the items which are more similar, right? It is just an example. There could be other things that can come under similarities, right? Yeah, UI and UX, absolutely. They actually deploy all of these principles, and we are going to look at one classic example in next slide, okay? And I'm going, if this was a physical class, I would literally distribute chocolates for the right answer in the next slide. Okay, but over here I just gave one example, right? So when you're looking at this picture of similarity, can your mind immediately group greens and grays into one? Is that correct, Paramita?
Yeah, it takes
Right,
a
it
little bit
can.
of yeah, it can, but
Yeah,
not as soon as it does with the proximity, because here there
proximity,
are
right? Yeah,
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 here there are
correct.
two
Yeah,
ingredients here,
so what
color
you could
and
do,
gap.
to make this effect even more profound. I agree with your point. And then, as I said, this visual is also incorrect because they should have followed the red dots here rather than doing this. In here also, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 green dots. Maybe I should have put all of those green dots first in maybe first two columns or this. And
Yeah,
then I
it's
should have
yeah.
started with the grays, right? That would have been even better visual. So your mind would be reading it
Like it
even
is,
more.
yeah, it's like continuity is scattered.
Yeah. But there could actually be a scenario. Imagine there were X and Y axis with this, right? And that is where these items were individually falling, but they do still have some similarity, okay, between them, and that is why they are highlighted and scattered like this. But still, your mind, because they are equidistant from each other, so the rule of proximity is actually not working here. But what is working is the color differentiation. Okay, the similar thing could happen. Maybe instead of the color, you could have chosen that all these greens I'll show by a triangle, and other things I'm showing by a square. Okay, that would also be the similarity principle. Immediately your mind will differentiate with the help of shapes. It will say, okay, there is one shape, I'll group all of such items in one place and then other items at one place. Okay. So UI and UX, somebody is asking. I do not have much experience with that, but I would still like to share at least what I know. And a person who has had a lot of experience, at least in designing dashboards. So these principles are very much used in all of this, right? And one classic example is the logos of the company. Okay, whether it is the color that is there used in the combination. Maybe you see the Zomato logo versus other logo, and what is that color trying to interpret from the font to the text to this. We will come to the design element one slide after that, and we will see some of those. And as you start noticing those logos, and you start noticing these signs and the advertisements which are there, you will see more and more of such principles. And especially something which is very eye catchy and which is which becomes viral these days, actually has employed these things in the background, right? So that's how they are using, these principles are always in the back of their mind. Yeah, I see two raised hands. Let's look at them. Yes, Vijendra.
Ma'am, you talked about logos because
Yeah,
they create an impact psychologically, and they have to
exactly,
follow with it.
exactly.
Can I
Okay.
Yes,
say?
Paramita.
Yeah, like
Sorry, you went on mute again.
can I say?
Yes, I can listen now.
Audible? Yeah. So if I'm really fast, I have to slow down. Sorry, guys.
Okay.
So, it was only gap in color. We could have taken like other gradients like shapes or directions if it is
Yes,
moving.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. As I said, the color differentiation is just one of the ways of differentiating. Your mind can interpret similarity in different ways. As I said, in terms of shapes or lines or colors or texture, anything could have been a differentiating factor, right? But whatever is that differentiating factor, your mind can then group the items according to that factor. Here I have used color as an example, but I'm not saying their color is the only one. There are others as well. Okay.
This color, due to this
Yeah,
color,
yeah.
it is seeming like it is moving away because the colors are very close to each other. So, like these are not contrasting colors to like
They
gray
are not
and
contrasting colors. Yeah. And see, here we do not know the context also, right? There is a slide on context that I will come to later on, and why and where context is important, but you do not have any information, right? And I do not want you to overthink on this. Okay. All I want you to do is just look at this visual. Okay. And maybe, Kashish, if you could do an immediate poll, because Paramita is having a confusion here, right? That she is not able to interpret this visual. Now, frankly speaking, when I first saw the visuals, my mind immediately said gray versus green, right? I did not look at the, at least I did not look at the proximity. I did not look at the distances or color codes or shadings or contrast between the colors. No, my mind immediately said gray versus green when I looked at the picture. Maybe is that the case with everything, or I have chosen a wrong example here?
Paramita, you can just put down your, answer in your chat box.
Yeah, yeah.
One thing before we go ahead, I'm really appreciative of all of the questions that are coming in. It's good to know that you guys are interacting. However, I'd like to request you to put down your questions in the question box and put your chat, which is your answers or your guesses or your suggestions, in the chat box. So this will allow us enough time to continue the flow of the session and not break it. And if in case there's any other questions that you would like to discuss, you can save it for the end, and I'm pretty sure Miss Ela here would be, very happy to address them towards the end. Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Miss Ela. I
Yeah.
think you.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I think many people are answering gray versus green, right? So that is how human mind is interpreting information, given no other information about this. I know this is not a perfect visual, but gray versus green is what your mind is screaming when you are looking at this visual. Okay. Let's move on to the next one. We still have two principles left. Okay. Now see, I have tried to create a differentiation into the screen, right? So I have created this sort of a dividing factor. So as soon as you are looking at this line over here, you are now immediately thinking that 3/4 I have, you now have two sections in the mind, and I have reserved 3/4 of something with for one thing, and then 1/4 for something, right? That's how your mind works. Okay, so now let's look at this example. As I said, I'll come to a logo, and this is a very classic example, FedEx logo. Okay, no googling, no asking ChatGPT. Okay, let's remember the rules again. And what do you see here in this logo? Okay, answer what do you see in the logo, and why it is very, very special? Okay, and please, anyone, if you know the answer already, if you've done this exercise anywhere else, please refrain from answering. Let people, think, and just take a hard look at this. Okay, Roger Federer nickname. Wow, I didn't know it was that. Okay. Contrast color in logo. Okay. What else? Take a hard look at this. This two separate words but joined together. Correct. Negative space. All right. Other answers, capital E. Yes. Okay. Very good answers. I think Vrushab has the right answer over here. And believe me, I hadn't also seen unless I was preparing for these slides. Okay. And that was the time I came across this classic example. And you would not have seen it so far. But from now on, whenever you will see the FedEx logo, you cannot miss this arrow. Okay. There is this. So you see, using the E and X, they have created this arrow over here. You see the arrow? Now you cannot unsee it. Anytime you see the FedEx logo, you're going to see this logo here. Okay. And so what they have done is somebody is using the concept of negative space, and I'm coming to that only through this. So there is a picture or a visual, which is the FedEx logo here, and then there is some background space, right? So with each picture there is a little bit of background, so that background is called the negative space, with the picture or the visual actually taking the pixels, calling the positive space. So sometimes you can do creative things with the negative space as well, like the logo creator of FedEx has done with this arrow, which is indicating the speedy delivery by the FedEx. That's a very intelligent design. Okay, now let's look at. Okay, why do I have to? Yeah. So this was the answer that I tried ChatGPT. Let's see what FedEx says about that. So this logo was introduced in 1994 and is actually one of the most iconic logos in the world. Because of its great design, the color contrast, as somebody rightly mentioned, and the speedy delivery that is being indicated by this logo. So ChatGPT knows the answer. That is why I'm asking. No ChatGPT during my session. Okay, now let's look at another example. Okay, so there are two different visuals. This is the first part and this is the second part. If you look closely, you will observe that both visuals are exactly same. It's just that the foreground and background, or the positive and negative space, whatever you want to call it, they have just been reversed. Okay, so in the first one you see two human like faces facing each other, right, in this one, and you see some white or the negative space in between. Just flip this visual. Okay, and now you are seeing kind of a lamp. Okay, and this is the white space, so the faces have become the white space, and that this has become the black space. Okay, so now you are seeing a lamp. Here you are seeing two faces facing each other. So how you use foreground versus background is actually very interesting, and people have created some really amazing visuals using the combination of the two, and that is what is called figure slash background rule, right, of this, which you can see in the FedEx logo and also in this. Okay, let me go to the last one. Okay, any guesses about FedEx delivery? Okay, now in the next one, when we are looking at this, what do you see here in this image? Quick answers. This is a simple one. It's not difficult like FedEx. Three shapes. Okay. Anyone else? Circle, triangle, square. Absolutely correct. That's the answer you're looking for. However, if you look at the visual, actually, the triangle is cut off from its top. The rectangle also is cut off, and both of these ends seem to go into a circle, which is also not complete. But still, your mind is interpreting it as three different shapes, which you are saying triangle, circle, and rectangle, and it is not really interpreting it as one complex image, right? However, if these shapes were to combine and form some something that you see every day, maybe it formed to combine a teddy bear, or it formed to combine something that you can identify, then your mind will immediately switch. Then it will not see the shapes, it will see that figure, right? But here it is not seeing it as a complex multi-shape, some random item. It is instead seeing it as a triangle, a square, and a rectangle. And this law is called symmetry and order. So your mind always wants to see symmetric things. That is why we feel weird, when asymmetric things happen, or when things, happen out of order, the way you have not expected. So that's the rule of symmetry and order. So together, these six were the original Gestalt principles that were given by this German scientist. And these are extremely important, right? You have to think about color coordinations and all these things when you are designing a dashboard in order to tell a very compelling story. And we'll see a very classic example in the next slides. I'm coming to the design elements now. Somebody was talking about UI, UX, and those things. So these are some basic design elements, and we have discussed them directly or indirectly in Gestalt principles also. So I'll not take much time in this slide because I have more interesting cases to discuss in the next slides. But I'll quickly go through that. So like the first one is the lines, very popularly and very simple to use element that you can use in the dashboard. You can create spark lines, you can create trend lines and everything. Shapes we have already seen, how they can make a difference. So you can use bar charts, which are very popular, which is nothing but rectangular shape. We use pie chart and a circle. uh, uh, Circle as a pie chart, and also donut chart, which is maybe one circle within the other, also to represent our data. Okay. I want to leave you with a question. I do not want the answer now. In the end, if the time permits, maybe note down the question. Even though pie charts and donut charts are I think fourth or fifth most used visuals in the world, in the entire data visualization world, I'm making a very bold statement that they are not a very good visualization item. You can almost always you can replace it either with a bar chart, or with a clustered chart, or with the line chart. Okay, and what could be the reasoning behind that? Just think about it. I want to leave you with that question, and maybe in subsequent slides you might find some answers for it. Okay. The next one is colors. We saw the FedEx logo, the color contrast. You can see there's actually an entire color spectrum. I saw a nice visual somewhere which indicated like which color indicates warmth versus which color indicates love versus this and that. So different colors evoke different emotions, and we should always work with colors in order to tell the story that we are trying to look for, right? So you may want to create contrast with the colors like RYG we typically use to show the contrast, or to show things going well or not going well. You may want to stand out with the colors. You may want to play with the hue and saturation. I think someone was earlier asking the questions that we could use lighter and darker shade of the same color to highlight or stand out, make something stand out of it. Yeah. Okay. Then typography, if you're using text or the words like in the FedEx logo, how you're using them, then the texture of those and the space, the negative space that you have, how you are effectively utilizing it. So these all are the key elements that always should be there in the back of your mind, and you have to see what's the maximum and the efficient use you can do of these items to make your visualizations great. Okay, let's want to, yeah. Now I want to come to graphical integrity. I promised you in the beginning of the session that I want to try and tell you things which ChatGPT cannot, right? Rest everything it can do today, right? So I want to talk about graphical integrity. Now that you have learned about principles and the design elements, you may want to know what not to do when you are trying to create data visualizations. Believe it or not, the next 3 or 4 cases and the examples that I'm going to show you are from the world's most what you can say popular, and also maybe one of the most sold out newspapers, New York Times. And these visuals are as you can see, they look very old. They are from like 1960s, 70s, and 80s, that time frame. And from that time, the lying has continued in the visuals. So earlier we talked about when we looked at the Enscombe quartet. As as soon as we looked at the data of the 4 groups, we realized these 4 groups are very different, right? So their visuals were telling us a story. But many times data visualization experts have purposefully lied in their visuals and tried to paint a picture which is very different from what the picture actually looks like, right? So as a data visualization experts also, and as a person with integrity, you should always show the actual effect of data in the image rather than manipulating the data or showing the visuals with exaggerated efforts. That is what I want to cover in the next few slides, and this is called graphical integrity. Okay, so let's look at this graph. Okay, and I'm again going to ask you some questions. So from 1978 till 1985, this graph shows the fuel economy standards in the US. The units are in miles per gallon. So in 1978, you had about 18 miles per gallon as the fuel economy, and in 1985 that increased to 27.5. So we have the numbers here, and we also have the years here. So there is nothing wrong with the numbers being shown. But, but can you guess what is wrong with this visual? Disproportionate. Disproportionate to what? I would want maybe some explanation. White stripes. Okay. They've tried to paint a road, huh, by the way, because we are talking about fuel economy standards. Uh, Data variation is there, but not limited to design. Okay, maybe you also need to. The sizes are not proportionate to the figures. Very correct. Yeah, it's exponential. Should be from ascending to descending. Again, do not ever violate the primal instinct, right? So whenever human minds are thinking, they are thinking up means more, right? They are thinking red is danger, right? So do not violate those kind of instincts of humans, because that's how human brain is processing the information, right? So, and don't you think a simple line chart, starting from 1978 all the way up to 1985 with indicating from 18 to 27.5, or maybe a simple bar chart would have done the same job? It would have, right? So why to make such fancy visual and lie? Okay, now we are looking at how much of lie has gone into this image. Okay, and we'll do a quick calculation. Okay. So this line over here, so somebody said, right, disproportionate. Disproportionate to what? Okay. So in 1978, the fuel economy was 18 miles per gallon. And the line which is used to show 18 is actually how much? 0.6 inches long in this visual that you are seeing. In 1985, this line representing 27.5 miles per gallon is how much? 5.3 inches long. Okay. And let me compared to line chart. Yeah, absolutely. It is, taking a lot more space also. You have to be worried about each and every pixel when you are a data visualization expert. You cannot waste so much space on just showing some fancy visuals. Okay, let me, sorry. Yeah, so that is what is called a life factor in the visualizations. Let me show this first, which says what is the size of the effect shown in the visual, what's the size of effect in the data, right? So how much the data has actually changed? It has actually changed by 18 to 27.5, right? So if I were to do that, okay, I'm back and let me go to the Excel. Okay. So what is the actual change that has happened? Actual change has happened this much, right? So from 27.5, you went to 18. 18 to 27.5. So the change in percentage would be how much? 27.5 minus 18 into 100 by 18. And that comes out to be, I'm taking out the percentage, and the percentage is 52.78%. So this is the actual effect from 18 to 27.5 in the last 8 years. The fuel economy has increased by how much? 52%. Now let's see what's the visual is telling us. When you're looking at the visual here, do you think this line over here that is showing is 52% more? No, it is way more wrong. If it were 52% long, it would only go up to like this maximum. But this line is 5.3 inches long. So when you're trying to see what is the effect shown in the visual in this image, that is 5.3 minus 0.6 as compared to 0.6, which is an astounding 783%. So while the actual change in the data happened by only 52%, you are showing an staggering 783% change by lying into the visual. So what is your lie factor? Your lie factor is simply this effect by the actual effect, which comes out to be 14.85, like approximately 15, right? So you're lying 15 times, you are exaggerating your visual by 15 times. Okay. Uh, does everyone think that's a good practice to do? But everyone keeps doing, these visuals are from 1960s or 70s, but this thing, this thing keeps happening even today also. Yeah. Okay. Someone is saying, I do not feel that we should be measuring the width. Okay. Then what else should we be measuring? Yeah. Please, Nimish, if you want to unmute yourself and speak. Yes.
Sure. So basically, I feel that there's much more of a depth perspective rather than a width perspective. Like it's like a timeline. The journey of the mileage has been shown
Yeah.
against the year. So
Mm-hmm.
I feel measuring the width is not is in the sense of the representation of the mileage, I guess. So
Okay.
I
What
feel that
else do
it's
you
the
think should be measured if I want to compare? I think
I
they
think it
have
should be
shown
along
the,
the width
you're saying
along
along
the
this line? You're saying
yeah,
along this
along this
line?
line, I
Yeah.
believe what they're trying to do is they're showing against 85 what was the mileage at that point of time,
Okay.
rather than
Yeah.
showing. That is my interpretation entirely.
It's
Like,
okay. Yeah. Even if you do that, do you think this versus this is only 52%? Even if you go across this? I don't think
so
so,
that
right?
I feel is
Yeah.
it's just a linear thing, right? Because I feel what I'm trying to say is it's a depth perspective thing more than
Uh-huh.
a linear thing. So that's why we will not get a scalable thing exactly. If you had taken this like from a top view or something,
Mm-hmm.
then probably
Yeah,
that
exactly. But
we
see,
could have discussed.
how your brain is currently interpreting this visual, right? Your brain is not thinking top and this and that. Your brain is thinking in any way in this visual, is there anything that is proportionate to 52%, right? That's the actual change that has happened in the data, 52%. Do you think there is anything which is in proportion to that. Neither is this length nor is this width. Okay. Yes, Param, you have something to add?
Yeah, I'm Paramita. I have joined
Yes.
through another because my mobile was gone. Activity was so it's just a no need to complicate some. I according to my view, like it's just a simple road which is going. How you visualize a road going when you stand
Yeah.
little bit side of it,
Yeah. Yeah.
and in the it's a picture, and in the picture you just imprint your data on it.
Yeah.
It's like a picture and data combined
Absolutely
together.
agree. Yeah, absolutely agree. You're trying to be what you can say, you're trying to be creative with your data because it is related to fuel economy. You are trying to show a road, but do you think they're trying to show the road in a triangular manner, and they're trying to expand way beyond what they should be doing? And this has been published, you can see, on August 9, 1978 in New York Times. They're certainly, and they certainly know that they are lying into that, right? But when people are seeing, they are actually not seeing, because see, not everyone would know about life factor and all the things, right? This is for our study purpose, and our brain will see that. But unless until I told you about life factor, you would see there has been a huge change from 1978 to 85, and that's the case this visual is trying to make, which is not really the case. Okay. Vijendra, you want to add?
It's not my question, but in addition to someone posted in chat window,
Mhm.
because I myself, as soon as I saw the picture, I started calculating the numbers.
Yeah.
Uh, Someone Rakesh has put the same question here as well.
Yeah.
But then every organization is data driven, right? So
Yes.
that really means that from using the data, you can easily manipulate the data, and even the
Exactly,
decision tools are
exactly.
not accurate.
Right. So there are two things. One, you can manipulate the data, but here you are not doing any data manipulation, by the way. You're showing the exact numbers, but still your mind is interpreting that the difference, it is not interpreting the difference between 18 and 27 versus it is interpreting the difference between this and this. And you're thinking a huge change has happened between 78 and 85, while that is not actually the case. Okay. So it is lying through the visual. You're not really manipulating the data because you're giving accurate numbers. The only problem is how your mind is interpreting. Okay, because you are lying into the visual. Okay, someone is confusing the fuelica, which is more of exactly. Now imagine why to go through such lengths of creating such a confusing visual when you could simply have, year on x-axis and have bar charts on y-axis.
That's why I said that it's
Yeah.
a combination of picture and
Exactly. That's what I am
no
trying to
need
say
of
too, right?
complicating
No
some.
need of complicating, right? That is why bar charts are the best. Bar charts and line charts. Whenever you are in confusion, use these two. Okay. And I can guarantee you more than 80% of what you want to do can be done using a bar chart or a line chart. Okay. The problem is we try to do fancy visuals, 3D visuals and this and that. You don't really need that. They all confuse. Your mind can interpret and read information in one dimension much more than it can do in multi dimensions. Okay. So always try to use one dimensional visuals. Okay. Yeah. Senior management goes by fancy visuals. Maybe show them this slide and they'll be convinced. Okay. Or ask me to take a session for them. Okay. Paramita, can we get to that post the session? I have some more examples that I would like to show. And there is a very classic example of how data, because I'm now telling you the cases what you should not be doing in a visual. And I have a very classic example for all of you to show what you should be doing in a data visualization. There is a very classic example and I would really like to get to it before my time is up. Okay, then we're talking about design variation versus data variation. In the earlier visual also we saw that, and here also I would like to show. So they are showing the price per barrel of light crude, okay, in different scenarios from January to April. And so they've now used the barrel, right? Again, using props to lie into the data, right? So from $2.41, they are saying it has changed to 13.34. So you can again do the math and everything. So 13.34, and on April 1, it has become 14.55. So if you do the difference between the actual data, and again, see how your mind is now interpreting the the cylinders or which are kept over here. So from 2.41 to 14.55, there is a lie factor of 9.4. The change is 708%, but through the visuals, it has been shown as a 6,700% change. So another lie. So as a data visualizer, you have to show the variation in the data, not the variation in the design, right? There's no need of, again, these fancy barrels to show over there. No, you have to simply show the numbers, which speak for themselves. Just create a small line chart. A simple trend line was effective here and in the previous case also. Okay. Now look at this. This one is a little bit more interesting and more intricate in terms of the lie that they have weaved into the visual. Like the earlier ones were quite visible. Okay, this one is more intricate. I'm sorry. Yeah. So they are now showing the New York State total budget expenditures and how much, what percentage of this they have given to localities. Again, from 1966, they are going all the way to 1977, starting from a $4 total budget to 10.8. Okay. Now, what trick are they using here? I want quick answers, one or two.
Attendees, request you to please use the chat window so that we have enough time.
Any quick answer here? What is the tool here used by the visualizer here that is causing you to think and interpret data in a lie form? The change is not that much, but it is stacking is playing the trick. Very good, very good. How they have been stacked, I'll actually clear all of this clutter and then I'll see. You see some trapeziums going inside. Okay, let me go directly into the visuals. You see how they are coming. So from the left side, they are like coming like this. They are somewhere meeting in the center at around 7.1, and then they are going like that. Whenever the information is something like that, you are now interpreting this 10.8 much higher than you would normally interpret if it was simply in a line chart. Okay, and let's see how that is created. So this is the lie, they have created for you. Now let's look at the left visual for this is what I was saying, the technique they have deployed in terms of parallelopiped that they have, fitted between those numbers. And this could again, simply be done by a bar chart. Now you won't see as much difference as you were seeing here. So again, this is a case of design variation versus data variation. Always show the variation in the data, not the design. Okay, and always use the simplest chart. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Then the next one is the visual area. Okay, again, deploying the same technique. They are saying the shrinking family doctor from 1964 all the way to 1990, which is like drop from a 27 to 12%. However, what they have shown, the doctor, again, now you are seeing the doctor in 3D and you are interpreting this doctor. So 12 to 27% is changes, I think 200 something percent, right? And but you're not seeing, do you see this doctor as like 200% of this? No, you think this doctor is very much, much bigger compared to the doctor which is here in 1990. Also, what you see is that they have stacked, instead of showing the three doctors, side by side, they are showing them in the depth again. So again, what happens, what is closer to you, which is again, this bigger doctor over here in 1964, anyway appears to your mind as bigger compared to the one which the poor guy is stacked at the back. Okay, so you are again showing lie, which is a lie factor of 2.8, not as bad as we saw in the last example. Again, the overlaid perspective and incorrect horizontal spacing. Okay, now let's talk about the context, right? Somebody earlier also mentioned what is the context. Okay, and let's look at the example of context. If you were given this visual, so there are 2 years. This is a simple line chart, by the way. So we are not lying here in terms of the data now. Okay, that's perfectly fine. So from 55 to 56. So in Connecticut, they are presenting the traffic deaths and they are saying the deaths have decreased from some 325 to some 280 or 285. And they are saying during this year, they have done some strict enforcement. if you were to read this visual and it is published in a very reputed newspaper, your interpretation would be that because the police had a stricter enforcement in this year, that is why you are able to see this drop, right? You would directly attribute it to that. But was that really the case? What's missing here in this visual now, by the way? Now there is no lying here in terms of any design variation or lying by exaggerating something or this. So what is missing here? The slide title is context, so just take a quick guess. Something which is missing here, let me give you the answers. There are two things which are missing. So the first thing is, what is missing is actually the context of other years. What was happening before 55 to this to these deaths in this state, and what happened after 56. Okay, if the enforcement came, did it reduce even more significantly? Okay, and then the same goes on for what is happening at the states which are closer to this state. Okay, and when we look at the context, actually this is what happens. If I look at the deaths in Connecticut from 1951 to 59, now there is a very different picture. So this line over here is what you saw uh, in this first image, right? And it was totally out of context taken. Now you see the full context, right? In fact, only a year before, the death had increased a lot, and it has even not recovered in the next year to its previous status, right? So that's one way of looking at the context. And then the other way of looking at the context is comparing it with the neighboring state. So we are comparing it with New York, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island. And you will see again in that particular year when it increased, it actually had the maximum number of deaths in that particular year. So of course from there it had to go down. And if my earlier readings are to be correct, I think there was some highway construction in this in the previous year, because of which the deaths had actually increased a lot. And then post that, actually the traffic got diverted a lot and was not coming to the state. And that was actually the primary reason why the deaths lessened, not because of stricter enforcement. But if you were to see only this visual, you would take it out of context and attribute the reason of change to this. Okay, so never ever take things out of context. Always give context of that thing, of what was happening in the past. If you have any future or trend line data from the future that you can present, or you can compare that thing with with other counterparts of that, so that you can give some context to it. All right. Okay, yeah, with that, I'm now to my last slide, and I've also listed some resources for really good examples of data visualizations. Okay, so we have talked a lot about what we should and shouldn't do when we are presenting data visualization. This is a TED talk from Hans Rosling. We'll only see around 2 to 3 minutes portion of it, and you must see how this guy is simply presenting the data which is available open source, and what kind of compelling story he's telling from that. Okay, this is you can say the benchmark in the data visualization. Okay, so let me play the video, and maybe Kashish, you can help me if the audio sound is coming.
Sure, Leela.
Yeah, is the sound coming?
Not really. I'm not able to hear anything yet.
Okay.
While sharing the screen, have you shared your audio as well? I think you'd have to reshare your screen.
Okay, I have actually linked it over here and it is playing for me. So at least on my headphones, the voice is coming.
Okay.
How do
Are
I
you
make
able
it?
to hear it?
This is on YouTube, by the way. So can you help me play it? You need to type Hans Rosling data visualization and
I have the video with me right away. Shall I go
okay.
ahead and share it?
Yes, please. Yeah.
So the first 2 minutes is what you want to play?
Yeah, you can actually start from uh yeah. First, yeah. Yeah, first 2 3 minutes. 3 minutes is what I want.
All right, all right. I'll go ahead and do that. Folks, can you please give me a thumbs up if you're able to see my screen? Just a second. Let me share it directly on YouTube.
Yeah. And I want everyone to listen to each and every word that he's saying and then how he's presenting the data. So basically the data that okay, Kashish, now we were able to hear, but we could not see the YouTube.
Yeah, just testing the audio. I think you should be able to see it now. Are you guys able to?
Yeah.
About 10 years ago, I took on the task to teach global development to Swedish undergraduate students. That was after having spent about 20 years together with African institutions studying hunger in Africa. So I was sort of expected to know a little about the world. And I started in our medical university, Karolinska Institute, an undergraduate course called Global Health. But when you get that opportunity, you get a little nervous. I thought these students coming to us actually have the highest grade you can get in Swedish college system. So I thought maybe they know everything I'm going to teach them about. So I did a pre-test when they came. And one of the questions from which I learned a lot was this one: which country has the highest child mortality of these 5 pairs? And I put them together so that in each pair of country, one has twice the child mortality of the other. And this means that it's much bigger the difference than the uncertainty of the data. I won't put you at a test here, but it's Turkey, which is highest there, Poland, Russia, Pakistan, and South Africa. And these were the results of the Swedish students. I did it, so I got a confidence interval, which was pretty narrow, and I got happy, of course. I had 1.8 right answer out of 5 possible. That means that there was a place for a professor of international health and for my course. But one late night, when I was compiling the report, I really realized my discovery. I have shown that Swedish top students know statistically significantly less about the world than the chimpanzees. Because the chimpanzee would score half right. If I gave them 2 bananas with Sri Lanka and Turkey, they would be right half of the cases. But the students are not there. The problem for me was not ignorance, it was preconceived ideas. I did also an unethical study of the professors of the Karolinska Institute that hands out the Nobel Prize in medicine, and they are on par with the chimpanzee there. So this is where I realized that there was really a need to communicate, because the data of what's happening in the world and the child health of every country is very well aware. So we did this software which displays it like this. Every bubble here is a country. This country over here is this is China. This is India. The size of the bubble is the population. And on this axis here, I put fertility rate. Because my students, what they said when they looked upon the world, and I asked them, what do you really think about the world? Well, I first discovered that the textbook was Tintin mainly. And they said the world is still we and them. And we is Western world, and them is third world. And what do you mean with Western world? I said, well, that's long life in small family, and third world is short life in large family. So this is what I could display here. I put fertility rate here, number of children per woman, 1, 2, 3, 4, up to about 8 children per woman. We have very good data since 1962, 1960 about, on the size of families in all countries. The error margin is narrow. Here I put life expectancy at birth, from 30 years in some countries up to about 70 years. And 1962, there was really a group of countries here that was industrialized countries, and they had small families and long lives. And these were the developing countries. They had large families and they had relatively short lives. Now, what has happened since 1962? We want to see the change. Are the students right? It's still 2 types of countries? Or have these developing countries got smaller families and they live here? Or have they got longer lives and live up there? Let's see. We start the world. And this is all UN statistic that has been available. Here we go. Can you see there? It's China. They're moving against better health. They're improving there. All the green Latin American countries families, they are moving towards smaller families. The yellow ones here are the Arabic countries, and they get larger families, but longer life, but not larger families. The Africans are the green down here, they still remain here. This is India. Indonesia is moving on pretty fast. And in the 80s here, you have Bangladesh still among the African countries there, but now Bangladesh, it's a miracle that happens in the 80s. The imams start to promote family planning, and they move up into that corner. And in 90s, we have the terrible HIV epidemic that takes down the life expectancy of the African countries, and all the rest of the world moves up into the corner where we have long lives and small family, and we have a completely new world.
Can we pause now? Yeah. I think you saw a glimpse of what he has done with that data. By the way, that visualization you can recreate. I have recreated in a tool called Tableau. So it gives you that video playing kind of option wherein you can stack your data according to yours, and then you can show this kind of a bubble chart that you can do. But it is amazing to see how he has interpreted the same data. He's not using any life factor and all. He's using real stories, and he has done that in-depth study onto the data, and he's trying to present the new views, that even the developing countries and even underdeveloped countries in 1960s, they made great progress, right? But the vision or the view of the developed countries or the students or people coming from there may still be biased, and they still might be thinking that they are much advanced than we are. Yes, somebody has shared the Tableau link. So with that, I think I would like to summarize and put an end to the session. Thank you for bearing with me so far. In today's session, we talked about understanding the stakeholders' requirements, how to translate that into something actionable. We saw how to manage various kinds of stakeholders. Then we went into the design principles, which were given by Gestalt. Then we looked at design elements. We looked at graphical integrity and several cases of it. And finally, a classic example in visualization. Okay. I would like to urge all of you to view. So there is now a new talk by Hans Rosling, and even his son has joined him. So first listen to this one. Just type in YouTube Hans Rosling data visualization, and you'll see his talks. This one was the first one which really went viral in how he interpreted the data and how really showed the progress that developing countries have made. And he's now again making that effort with his latest TED talk. So please do go through it and watch it. And in terms of visualization tools, I think the top two which are there currently in the market are Tableau and Power BI. So Power BI is from Microsoft. Some of you might be using some of these in your corporations, these tools. So that's that about the tools. In the end of the slide, if we can share the slide, I'll also share that I have mentioned some resources. Actually, let me quickly share my screen just for a second. Okay, so these are the resources, where you can get some good data, and maybe you are trying to see what you can do with the data. So this Gapminder world is actually where Hans Rosling has taken the data that he was showing in the TED Talk. This is a freely available tool. There is a lot of gender-based or I think human trafficking data also with their population data, diseases and all impacted and everything. So this is a huge effort that has been done. So you can pick up some data from here and do some data visualization exercises in your spare time. So these are some sources I thought I would list down that might help you. Okay, with that, thank you for being an engaging audience. And I look forward to maybe engaging with you in one or the other ways. And I'm here right now. If you have any questions, I can still stay on. You can unmute yourself and we can discuss that.
Masila, we have one question that has been personally inboxed to me. This is with regards to the 3D data that was showcased.
Yes.
The question is, we have seen 3D data evolve in all of these ages, but what about 3D pie charts? Would you still be for 3D pie charts or against?
No, totally against. And I think, yeah, now that somebody mentioned the pie chart, I think there was one thing that I said I would come back. to that. So now can you see what was wrong with this? I think when I started with the session, I said, there is something inherently wrong, with the primal instincts of human. Can now anyone guess quickly? No, what is wrong here? Inverted axis, absolutely correct, right? So the interest low to high is correct. What is incorrect is power low to high, right? So whenever we are thinking about high, we are always thinking up, isn't it? Any large story buildings, mountains, and anything. So whenever the concept of high comes, we are always going from lower to upper. Okay, and this visual here, right, is actually working against that. It is saying low power and high power is at the bottom, right? So that is why in the next slide, because this I picked up from somewhere, that is why when I made my slide, so again, low to high, you are going in this direction and this. So moving forward or moving up, that is the primal instincts of human. That's one. And the second, I asked a question that, why pie charts or donut charts, even after, having so much of utility, and they are like the fourth or fifth most utilized visual, they are not a great choice, is because, they are asking human brains to interpret the data in 2D world. Okay, forget about 3D. Your mind is not capable enough to differentiate in 2D. So suppose you had a bar chart, even if you were to make two bars of 3.7 and 4, your mind would be immediately able to see the difference, no matter how small that is. But if that 3.7 and 4 is there in a pie chart, and you please try that. I wish I had some examples ready to show you. But actually that happens. Your mind cannot read the difference in 2D, and forget about 3D. 3D differentiating between that, unless until the segments are too big or differentiated from each other, you cannot. And that is where they are not a good choice for it. Okay.
We have one more question in the chat box. How do we
Mhm.
correlate the visualization part to stakeholders' communication management?
Yeah,
This
well, it can be tied down to the to the storytelling, right? So let's say you had one brainstorming session with your customers or stakeholders on what you would be presenting, or what you would be delivering as a final project, right? So you have created a business requirement documents and all other 20 other documents, right? But if you go with them with a visual of what you are really looking for into as a final product, right, when you're really showing the data, where you are struggling, maybe as I said, in this slide, you have to consult them with the decision making. If you're really showing the data why you are stuck, if you're stuck at a problem, you're really showing the risks of the project in those red in the review meetings, right? These are all the tactics that you can use while communicating with your stakeholders and your customers, to keep them, one, updated about it, and then second, draw their attention towards what are the key portions of this. Okay, so that's how you can tie the two things together. I think today, I would say, if you have to show or present anything to anyone, rather than using maybe slides or something, always use a visual, because that has a much higher appeal and easier understanding for your clients or customers.
Thank you
Okay.
so much. I think that answers pretty much everyone's questions. Given the time constraints, I absolutely understand this was such an interactive class. In fact, I can personally probably think of 10 questions that I would want to ask Miss Ela. But given the time constraints, this was our time with Miss Ela. I'm pretty sure all of you would have more questions. Miss Ela, just a minute, and I will quickly.
I could probably share my LinkedIn profile, or if you have, like
That would be
someone.
perfect. That would
Yeah.
be. So, let me quickly share my screen and we'll go ahead and close the session. First of all, a big, big thank you to Miss Ela here for presenting this wonderful class. I'm sure all of the attendees are very happy. We have some wonderful feedback for you waiting in the chat box to be read. Thank you so much for coming down and spending these 2 hours with us and giving us so much informative data to retain, to think about. And once the session is over, I'm pretty sure we're not just going to think about it, we're going to visualize it as well. And the outcome seems pretty perfect.